So having so far completed the different forms of yoga, it is now important for us to understand what is the end point. If you do what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, if you are doing what I am explaining to you in the sessions on the Bhagavad Gita, what will happen to you? Where will you reach? What will be your position? What will be your state of mind? All these are going to be answered now because we are going to do what is the state of Jeevan Mukti. So Jeevan Mukti is not an all or nothing phenomenon. It's not that one day you are a confused person, next day you become Jeevan Mukt. But you can increase the symptoms of being Jeevan Mukt. And you can find for yourself that you are becoming increasingly detached from the world and increasingly conscious of God. And many of you who are following the instructions on offering every action to God in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, who are chanting God's name as I have described to you for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, must already be experiencing a definite degree of quietude of the mind. They're beginning to taste what is a silent mind. And also, they will be realizing what it means to be detached from the world, because things in the world will disturb them less and less. So in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that indeed, Arjuna, do not be concerned with the flowery language of the Vedas. Because when you are out of the dense forest of delusion, you will become indifferent to all the scriptures. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyasi tatha gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. So Krishna tells Arjuna, when your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you will be indifferent to all the scriptures. Your mind will be no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas. And when it is fixed in the trance of self-realization, when you are on the platform of Brahman, you will have attained the divine consciousness. So Krishna explains all this to Arjuna in the 52nd and 53rd verse of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And he explains to Arjuna that you become situated on the platform of divinity. And when your purified mind is taking rest in divinity, you will become what they call as Stitha Pragna. So, Stitha Pragna essentially means you will be fixed in knowledge of consciousness. It also means that you are on the platform of Brahman. And on that platform of Brahman, you will experience many things which will be described herein. It's like when you go to a gym, you want to see what will you become as a result of going to that gym. So if you're a young man who's gone to the gym to build his body, and you meet one of the instructors who's bulging with muscles in places where you did not even have places, then you feel, this guy is a person who is what I can become. Similarly, if you go to learn music and you hear one of their professional singers singing, And then you say, wow, this is what I want to become. So you want to see the end point. Where do all these different forms of yogas lead to? If I follow all this, what will become of me? How will I become transformed? And that transformation is described throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So you will find that Krishna describes here in second chapter the person who is Stitha Pragna. Then he will go on to describe what is a person who is absorbed in Karma Yoga and thus absorbed on the platform of divinity through Karma Yoga. Then you will come to that state where Krishna describes the yogi who is absorbed in divinity through meditation. And so on, you will go on to find what is the nature of Krishna's bhakta, whom Krishna says, this is my bhakta. And then you will come to that state where Krishna discusses who is Gunatita, who has risen beyond the gunas or Prakriti. And you will find, because I will cover each of them one by one, you will find that all of them are very, very similar. They are all very, very similar. And having been very similar, it is interesting and important to study them, because you will have milestones and markers on your journey to God realization. And these milestones and markers will let you know that you are on the right path. There are many religions that tell you that you do this and then you will go to heaven. You do this and you will get 64 virgins. You do this and after you die, this will happen to you. But Bhagavad Gita does not dwell on all these things. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tries to tell you, you will get something here and now. You will become, in this life itself, you will become Stitha Pragna. In this life itself, you will be situated on the platform of realization, you doing Karma Yoga. On this platform, in this life, following the instructions of meditation, you will attain that platform of being established in the spirit. Following these instructions, you will eventually become my devotee. Following Jnana Yoga, you will cross beyond the Prakriti. By engaging in Bhakti Yoga, you will cross beyond Prakriti. These are all described to you. So you can see that this is not a post-dated check that is given to you. It is something that you can experience here and now. So Krishna is speaking to Arjun, and Arjun is in a state of deep disturbance. And why is he in a state of deep disturbance? He is in a state of deep disturbance not because he is afraid of the war in front of him. He is afraid of the karmic consequences of the war. And since he is disturbed by the karmic consequence of the war, he says, these are all my teachers, my guru, my cousins, my relatives, and my grandsire, and I'll kill all of them, and what will happen to me? I'll become responsible for all that will follow. And thus, he is defeated by the law of karma. And Krishna is instructing him in the Bhagavad Gita how to transcend karma, how to act without a sense of self, how to act with a spirit of devotion and renunciation, how to act as performing every action as a gift to God. So here, Krishna tells Arjuna that do not worry about the Vedas. You will, once you attain the platform of Brahman, once you attain the divine consciousness, once you are Stitha Pragna, once you are fixed in the trance of self-realization, you will become indifferent to everything that has been heard. all the scriptures that have been heard and yet to be heard. So Krishna, having told him this, at the end of the second chapter, Arjuna speaks to Krishna and asks him in text 54, Stitha Pragnasya ka bhasha samadhi stasya keshava stitadi kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. Arjun said, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? What are the symptoms of one who is on the platform of Brahman? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? With this text 54, Krishna begins the description for the first time, which he will repeat many times over throughout the Bhagavad Gita, on what is the state of a person who is situated on the platform of Brahman, of transcendence. What is the state of one who is Jeevan Mukti? How will you become my friend as you advance sincerely on this path? And Krishna answers and says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Prajahati Yadakaman Sarvam Partha Manogatan Atmanya Evatmana Tushta Stitha Pragnastaduchyate. The Lord said, O Partha, when a person gives up all varieties of sense desire, when you give up all desires that arise from your mind, from the restlessness of your mind, from the monkey mind, when from your agitated mind, your disturbed mind, you give up all sense of desires, all desires you give up, and the purified mind finds satisfaction in the soul alone. Mind finds satisfaction in divinity alone. Then that person is said to be on the Brahma Bhuta platform. He is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So having said this, Krishna tells him, this is how you will experience it, because this is how the Stitha Pragna will be. Please understand the first point here when we are discussing Stitha Pragna or any of the other states. Do not use them to compare these descriptions with other people. अरे वो देख वो स्थित प्रज्ञा नहीं है, अरे वो देख वो भक्त नहीं है. These descriptions are meant for you and you alone. When he's describing this, he's describing this to Arjuna, so Arjuna will understand what will happen to him from this current state of disturbed mind where he will reach. So also when we're discussing Bhagavad Gita, I'm explaining to you what is going to happen to you as you progress towards this state of Stitha Pragna, of Jeevan Mukti, of Brahma Bhuta platform. So Krishna explains and he says, Dukheshu anudvignamana, Sukheshu vigata spriha, Vita raga bhaya krodha, Stitidhir muni uchyate. So Krishna explains to Arjun very nicely that you are currently in such a disturbed state of mind because of all your thoughts and mental disturbances and desires. When you become free from all these mental disturbances, then you will be Stitha Pragna. When there is cause for sorrow, you will not be disturbed by sorrow. Everybody around you will be weeping, but you will not feel sorrow. Everybody around you is jumping and dancing with joy. But you will be free from excitement. You will become free from attachment to all people and all things. And because you are free from attachment, you will be free from fear. Because when you're attached to something, there is always the fear that it will be taken away from you or that you will lose it. And you will become free from anger, because anger comes from desire, and Krishna will explain this a few verses down. So one who is not sorrowful when there's cause for sorrow, one who's not excited when there's cause for joy, one who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, such is the person who is situated as a Stitha Pragna. Very clearly, Krishna explains this. It's very difficult for people to understand how such a person can exist. I met somebody in the United States who said, "Aisa koi aadmi ho hi nahi sakta hai." I said, "What?" He's saying this, what you're talking about of being Stitha Pragna, beyond joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor and all these things. I said, there's nobody like that in this world. I said, you are from America, you are seeing movies every day, right? Don't you realize that not only does it exist, but it is constantly repeated on the screen and people identify with it? I said, have you seen Arnold Schwarzenegger on the screen? He gets into a fight, puts a knife into somebody's abdomen, driving it into the bamboo wall behind him, and says, stick around, with a straight face. As a Terminator, he comes and says, I'll be back, with a straight face. Without fear, without sorrow, without anger. It's a very attractive state of being. That's why they become famous. In another generation, you had Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry, who would take out his gun and he would say, make my day, without any expression on his face. Similarly, if you go and see Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, etc., Rocky is a person who goes into battle, but all the time he has only one expression on his face, to imply that he is free from all emotions. Indeed, my friends, we become victims of people in the world who press our buttons, who pull our strings. But when you are situated on that platform of Stitha Pragna, you become free from all reactive emotions. People will not make you angry. People will not make you fearful. People will not make you joyful. You will be free from joy and sorrow. You will be indifferent when you are honored and when you are dishonored. You will be the same in heat and cold, in joy and sorrow, in honor and dishonor. You will remain the same. For you will have conquered your mind by having given up all desires and being absorbed in God. By remembering God and forgetting self, you will find that you will reach this platform of Stitha Pragna. So Krishna says further that ya sarvatra anabhishnehas tat tat prapya shubha shubham nabi nandati na dveshati tasya pragna pratishtitah. So when he is without attachment, when you are without attachment, you will not rejoice when you obtain something which is shubha or auspicious or good. You will not be sorrowful when you obtain something that is inauspicious or evil. you will be firmly fixed in divinity. Your consciousness will firmly be fixed in divinity. And how does that happen? Krishna explains in the next verse. Just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs and head into its shell, so also one who is able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects is understood to be situated on that platform. Yada samarate chayam kurmanganiva sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragna pratishtitah. If you see a tortoise or if you see a turtle and you threaten it, the tortoise just withdraws himself into the shell. He does not chase it. He does not come out to attack you. He does not try to run away. He just goes into his shell. He withdraws all four limbs and he withdraws his head into the shell. And voila, no tortoise. So also, when a person who's situated on the platform of transcendence is exposed to all kinds of temptations in the world, the objects of the world, the attractions of the world, the pleasures of the world, when all these things come to attract him or even to threaten him, this Stitha Pragna, this person who is situated on the Brahma Bhuta platform, this individual who is situated in transcendental consciousness, he withdraws his senses into himself, just like the tortoise withdraws his limbs into his shell. Indeed, you might think that if you withdraw yourself from temptations or fears, will they not continue to disturb you? Will they not continue to attract you? So Krishna says, yes, they will continue to attract you, even though you are on the platform of Brahma Bhut initially. But when you really get the taste of Brahma Bhut, you will experience this higher taste of Brahman. When you experience this higher taste of spirit, of spirituality, then you will become fixed in that consciousness. Then the world will not be able to tempt you. So he says, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasapiyasya param drishtva nivartate. So although you're restricted from those enjoyments, the taste for those enjoyments will remain. But having stopped all those enjoyments and having experienced a higher taste, you become fixed in consciousness. You become fixed in consciousness. I'm giving you a very simple example. A simple example of, if you are very attracted, let us say, to film music, if you are very attracted to pop music, you will want to keep on going and listening to that pop music. But if you start listening to bhajan, if you start listening to kirtan, initially you may not have a taste. But as you keep listening to bhajan and kirtan, as you keep listening to bhajan and kirtan, you will then lose your taste for Bollywood music. You will lose your taste for pop music. You will find yourself being absorbed only in bhajan and kirtan. And finally, having experienced that higher taste, while you will enjoy bhajan and kirtan, you will not even crave it. So in the beginning, you will have taste for other music. Then you will acquire the taste for bhajan kirtan. And the third stage is that you will become free from all attachment. Although you will enjoy bhajan and kirtan because it is connected to God, you will not crave it. You will not go around searching for it. If you are used to dry roti, sukha roti, and you think that you have a taste for it and you like it, but when somebody gives you a delicious paratha, delicious stuffed paratha, stuffed with your special taste, then when you eat that paratha, you cannot go back to eating the dry roti. This is the difference. So when your mind is seeking pleasures in the world, it thinks that the world is wonderful. But the real thirst of the mind can really be satisfied only when it experiences divinity, when it experiences God, only when it experiences spirit, when it experiences silence, then it really understands what is bliss. Then it understands what is really joy. And therefore, once you experience that higher taste, that lower taste falls away. So, you have to be careful, O Arjuna, Krishna says. The senses are so very strong that they will carry away the mind. Even a man of discrimination, even an intelligent person, even a sophisticated person, even a person of culture, his mind will be dragged away by his senses. So many cases we see, of famous people who have given in to temptation. And we read about them in the newspapers. We read about them in the magazines. We read about them on the internet. So this is the state that no man is immune. So many self-styled gurus one finds who have been caught up in one temptation or another, and therefore they are dragged into disrepute. So you must understand that the senses are very strong. And therefore, in order to control these senses, Krishna says, fix your consciousness upon me. Fix your consciousness upon me. So Krishna says, Tani sarvani samyamya yukta sita matpara vashehi yasya indriyani tasya pragna pratishtitah. So Krishna explains, yukta asita matparaha. Many people, they believe they've attained this platform of moksha through denial, through tapasya, through performing great feats of kriya. They believe that they have performed all kinds of feats and they have finally attained this platform of moksha. But if they do not fix their mind on God, they fall down from that position. The Bhagavad, in a prayer to God, Brahma says, Ye anya aravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvai ashtabhavada vishuddha buddhaya aroya krichrena parampada tatah anadritam yusma dangraya patantya adho yusma dangraya. So one, O lotus-eyed one, is speaking to God, Krishna. He says, O lotus-eyed one, there are so many people who think that they have obtained moksha. They have obtained parampadaha. They believe they have attained that platform of spirit. They think they have become Stitha Pragna. But although they have done this, because they do not take shelter at your feet, they fall down again into material existence. They must fall down again into material existence. So Krishna explains here that one who is yukta sita matparaha, one who is thus engaged in being continuously absorbed in God, that person becomes a person of Stitha Pragna. Because even a Stitha Pragna, if he is not careful, if he has not taken shelter of God, must again fall back into material existence. So, by learning to remember God and forget self, you attain that platform of Stitha Pragna from where you do not come down. But if you leave the process of remembering God and think you've done it yourself with all your tapasya and all your kriyas, then you will find that you will once again lose that state of consciousness. So Krishna explains why we become angry and how from the process of becoming angry, we lead to our destruction. It all begins with a thought, Krishna says in text 62 of second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. First you think of that object. First you think of that person. Sangaste supajayate. And because you are thinking and that thinking becomes a stream of thoughts which constantly connects you, it becomes indeed an attachment. So the thought, when it becomes a stream and connects you with that person or connects you with that object, it makes you become attached to that object or person. And when you have attachment, he says, Sangat sanjayate kamaha. You develop lust or strong desire for that object. You develop strong desire for that person. And what happens when somebody comes between you and that desire? When somebody comes in between and frustrates your desire, Krishna says, Kamat krodha vijayate. That desire, when frustrated, becomes anger. So it starts with a thought. That steady stream of thought becomes an attachment. From that attachment becomes a strong desire or lust. And from that lust, when frustrated, it becomes anger. And what happens to one who becomes angry? Anger is one of the gates to hell, Krishna says. Trividam narakasya idam dwaram nashanam atmanah kama krodha tatha lobhas tasmad etat trayam tajet. So there are three gates that lead to hell: lust, anger, and greed. When lust is frustrated, it leads to anger. When lust is satisfied, it leads to greed for more. So lust, anger, and greed are the three causes of entering a hellish state of existence. And Krishna explains how this happens in the 63rd verse of the second chapter. He says, Krodhad bhavati sammoha. When you become angry, then you can't think clearly. You are in a cloud of delusion. Anger leads to clouding of your mind. Anger leads to delusion. And when there is delusion of mind, what happens? Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Many unfortunate people have translated this smriti as memory. It's not wrong, but really what they mean by smriti is the text, just like you have shruti and then you have smriti. Shruti are those which deal with the divine scriptures, and smriti are those which deal with the laws and regulations of how to behave in the world, the laws of man, like Manu Smriti, for example. So there are different smritis for different times. For example, if you're living in India or in any other country, the penal code which is laid down for that country is the smriti. And sammohat smriti vibhramaha. When you are in delusion, you forget what is lawful, what is not lawful. You forget what is the idea, what should be done, what should not be done. You forget all the rules and regulations of civil and criminal conduct. You forget the behavior that is required from you in civil society. And when your knowledge of laws of the land as well as laws of God are completely disrupted and confused, what happens? Sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti brahmashad buddhi nasho. Once you forget the laws of the land, once you forget the laws of human behavior, once you forget morals, laws, ethics, conduct, when all this is lost, what happens? Buddhi nasho. Your intelligence is destroyed. And when buddhi nashat pranashyati, and when you lose your intelligence, then everything is lost. So again, I'm repeating, Krishna explains that dhyato vishayan pumsaha sangaste supajayate. First you have a thought, and that thought, steady stream of thoughts going from you to that object or that person creates attachment. That attachment then creates desire. That desire, when frustrated, creates anger. Anger leads to delusion. Delusion leads to forgetting what are the rules of conduct, behavior, morals, ethics, civil and criminal laws that exist. And when your knowledge of all these is destroyed, you don't know how to act, your intelligence is completely gone. And with the destruction of your intelligence, you are completely lost. Leads to your destruction. It leads to your material destruction. It leads to your spiritual destruction, which began with the thought. So I'll pause here and we will continue Stitha Pragna next time. If you have any questions on this subject, please feel free to ask me.
Yes, Dr. Shantanu, good morning. So the first question that we have, I'll read out the entire question to you. The desire to do good or the right thing is still a desire. Can it be sublimated by offering it to God? Is this understanding correct?
Yes, understanding is correct. You cannot live in this world without desire. If all desires are gone, very soon you will leave this body. But if you use your desires by directing them towards God, for example, if you perform all your actions, all your duties, all your professional responsibilities, all your job activities, if you offer them to God in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, calling out Om Tat Sat, then these actions become free of karma. Yagnartharth karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya muktu sanga samachara. So you become free of desires, and when you act in that way, without any desire as an offering to God, you attain freedom from karmas and ultimately you attain moksha. In this world, you should experience, by the grace of God, Stitha Pragna. So you cannot live without desire, but therefore desire should be directed to please God.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Shantanu. Dr. Shantanu, you mentioned the fact that one needs to go beyond joy and sorrow. Yet, we have questions that when it comes to family, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to really things that matter the most to you, one really cannot think of going beyond joy and sorrow, because these are the things that affect you. So what can really one do to really start off getting, going beyond joy and sorrow? And is it necessarily a bad thing to really feel these emotions?
So I have given a talk on emotional intelligence, and I think it's somewhere there on the internet. So it would be wise to, post it if someone can have access to it. But essentially, there are two types of emotions. Emotions that are provoked from the outside, which are known as reactive emotions. And then there are emotions which you generate internally. Because in this world, again, to function as an emotional creature will never work. So you have to use emotions to connect with other people in this world. And therefore, you can generate the appropriate emotion at the appropriate time, but it is never provoked from outside. So we are talking in Stitha Pragna state or any other of these states that we become free from reactive emotion. The emotions that the world provokes in us, the emotions that people provoke in us, when people shout at us, when people scream at us, when people, criticize us, when people try to provoke us, you are free. So this is freedom from reactive emotion. But when you need to connect to somebody and you feel a certain emotion is appropriate, you can choose that emotion and then you can use that emotion as a proactive emotion. So proactive emotions are the really pure and beautiful emotions. They're always the appropriate emotions. Whereas reactive emotions destroy your life.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Shantanu. I'll just read out a question that's just come up on Zoom. The question is moksha not a desire? When we say free from all desire, what do we really mean?
Free from all desire means free from desire for moksha also. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam va jagdisha kamaye mama janmani janmanishware bhavatat bhakti rahetuki tvai. I don't want wealth. I don't want beautiful members of the opposite sex. I do not want any number of disciples or followers. I do not even want to be given moksha if you don't want it. But you can bring me back again into this world again and again and again. Give me rebirth again and again and again so that I can serve you. And even when I serve you, I don't want to be specially rewarded by your glimpse or your attitude or your behavior or your embrace. Oh Lord, he says, Ashli Shava Padratam Pinastumam Adarshanam Marmatam Karotu Va Yatha Tatha Vidatu Lampato Mat Prananathastu Evanapara. That, oh Lord, even if you treat me roughly in your embrace, even if you kick me, even if you neglect me, even if you make me broken-hearted by never appearing in front of me, then also you shall be my worshipful Lord unconditionally. This is Parabhakti. Until you reach the platform of Brahma Bhut, Parabhakti is usually not an option. So therefore, akamo sarvakamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether you are full of desire, whether you have no desire, whether you have desire for moksha, please worship the Supreme Lord. And ultimately you will come to that platform without desire. We will come to that platform of Parabhakti or pure devotion. That is the aim, that is the goal. But you don't have to start there.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shantanu. I think these were the questions that came this week. If you want to tell our viewers what you will be covering next week, and if you want to give us
So
a brief.
next week I would like to continue with this section on Stitha Pragna, because this is the first introduction Krishna gives to that state of divine consciousness and how people behave in divine consciousness. And it's important for you, as I said, not to judge other people, but to judge how you are progressing towards this goal of being Stitha Pragna.
Right.
By God's grace, and I pray that God grants you His grace, if you do all that you are being requested to do, you must experience some symptoms of becoming less affected by the world, less reactive emotion being provoked in you. You should experience less attraction from the world. And you should indeed experience greater and greater peace of mind. Even now, if you've been following every single lecture from the beginning, if you're chanting the way I've asked you to, if you're truly doing all these things, offering your every action to God as a flower at his feet, at the end of the day, making a garland and putting it around his neck, you must be experiencing some definite improvement in your state of consciousness. You must be experiencing peace of mind. You will experience many, many symptoms as they go along. And if anyone is doing everything sincerely, then please contact me. I am the guarantor for you. You do it, I guarantee that you will experience these differences. If you are not experiencing, either you are not doing it properly or there's some problem. Most of the time, it's because you're not doing everything I've told you. But if you still have a problem and you are doing it very sincerely, I will be happy to answer any question you have.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shantanu. We look forward to next week's session. Thank you so much.
Right. So Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.